I almost threw the note away. It was folded small and tucked under my coffee cup like trash someone forgot to clean. It said, "Leave room 307 tonight. Trust me." I laughed and shook my head, thinking someone was bored or trying to scare guests. An hour later, the hotel maid came back to my door. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "Please, you have to go. They're watching you." I pulled my arm back and told her she was wrong. That's when she started crying. Real crying. "I tried to warn you," she said. "If you stay, something bad will happen." 3 hours later, I knew that note wasn't a joke. Before all of that, my life felt normal. I was in town for a short construction job, nothing exciting, just fixing electrical work at a warehouse. The hotel sat near the highway, clean but quiet, the kind of place people passed through and forgot. I stayed on the 3rd floor, room 307, facing the parking lot. Every night, I called my mother, Rosa. She always asked if I locked my door. My younger sister, Lena, sent me pictures of her dog to make me smile. I told them both I was fine. The front desk clerk, Marco, barely spoke when I checked in. He kept his eyes on the screen like he didn't want to remember faces. The maid, Yara, cleaned my room each morning. She was young, maybe early 20s, soft-spoken, and always nervous. She would knock, step in, clean fast, and leave like she was being timed. Once I asked her how her day was. She forced a smile and said, "Busy?" then looked down the hall before walking away. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Room 307 felt like any other room. A bed, a lamp, a locked door. I believed that was enough. Subscribe for more stories and tell me where you're watching from. I found the note after coming back from work, tired and hungry, thinking only about a shower and sleep. It was sitting right there under my coffee cup, folded so small I almost missed it. The words were written in pen, rushed but clear. "Leave room 307 tonight. Trust me." I looked around the room like someone might be watching from the bathroom or the closet. I laughed out loud, trying to shake the feeling crawling up my spine. Hotels get bored guests. Kids pull pranks. That was my excuse. I shoved the note in my pocket and went downstairs for a drink. The lobby felt colder than before. Marco was still at the desk, tapping on his keyboard. I said, "Long night?" He didn't look up. "They all are," he said. Something about the way he said it made my drink taste wrong. I didn't finish it. When I stepped off the elevator back on the 3rd floor, Yara was standing near the ice machine. She wasn't cleaning. She was just standing there, wringing her hands. When she saw me, her face went pale. "You read it," she said. I asked what she was talking about even though I already knew. She nodded fast. "The note. I left it. I told her she scared me for no reason." She shook, her head hard. "No, you don't understand." Her voice cracked and she started crying before she could stop herself. She grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "They think you're someone else." I asked who they were. She glanced at the ceiling like it might answer for her. "Men who watch. They have cameras. They watch this floor." I pulled my arm back and asked why she didn't tell the police. Her face collapsed. "Because my brother is with them," she said. "If I talk, he disappears." A door opened down the hall. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a dark jacket even though it was warm. He looked at us too long. Yara froze. Then she whispered, "Please," and walked away fast, turning the corner like she was running from something invisible. I stood there for a full minute before going into my room. I locked the door, then checked it again. I told myself she was lying. I told myself she was stressed, scared, making things up. Still, I moved a chair in front of the door before sitting on the bed. I pulled the note from my pocket and read it again. My hands were shaking now. Around 10, I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, careful. They stopped right in front of 307. I held my breath. After a few seconds, they moved on. I didn't sleep. I sat on the bed with the lamp on, scrolling through my phone without reading anything. At 1 in the morning, someone knocked once. Not loud, just enough to be heard. By the time I reached the door, the hallway was empty. No footsteps, no voices. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard nothing. That's when fear stopped being an idea and became real. I packed my bag halfway, then sat down again. I kept thinking about Yara's face, The way she cried like she already knew how this ended. If I left, she stayed. If I stayed, something came for me. I didn't know which was worse. I called my uncle Matteo. He answered on the second ring. I told him everything without stopping. When I finished, there was a pause. Then he said, "Do not sleep. Lock the door. Keep your phone charged." I asked him if I should leave. He said, "Not yet. If they think you're someone else, leaving could make it worse." He told me to keep my camera ready and call him if anything moved. After that call, the room felt smaller. Every sound mattered. Pipes, elevators, distant voices. At 2:30, the lights flickered once, just long enough to notice. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stay inside." No name, just that. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding, staring at the door, knowing whatever Yara warned me about was no longer waiting. It was already here. After the text came through, I knew I had crossed a line I could not step back from. Someone had my number. Someone knew I was awake. I checked the door again, pressing my shoulder into it, testing the lock. It held, but that did not calm me. Locks only work when people follow rules, and whoever was watching this floor did not. I sat on the bed and thought about leaving anyway. I could grab my bag, take the stairs, disappear into my car, and be gone before sunrise. That would be the smart move. That was what fear wanted me to do. But every time I pictured myself driving away, I saw Yara standing by the ice machine, crying and begging me to listen. She had already chosen to risk herself for me. Walking out felt like using her warning and throwing her away. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Matteo calling me back. I answered in a whisper. He asked if anything had changed. I told him about the knock, the text, the lights. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "They're testing you. They want to see if you panic." I asked him what I should do next. He said, "You stay put. You document everything. If they come in, you make sure they're seen." I didn't feel brave. I felt sick, but I listened. I set my phone on the dresser, camera ready, plugged into the charger. I moved slowly, careful not to make noise. I slid the chair away from the door because Matteo said blocking it could make things worse. "If they force it," he told me, "you want time, not resistance." Around 2:45, I heard voices in the hallway, low, calm, like they had all the time in the world. My chest tightened. I thought about my mother and how she always told me to trust my gut. I thought about my sister's last text, a picture of her dog sleeping on his back. I realized that if I got through this, I would never ignore small warnings again. There was a soft scrape at my door, metal against metal, a key testing the lock. I stood up and held my phone with both hands, pointing it straight ahead. My legs felt weak, but they stayed under me. I whispered to myself, "Stay steady." The lock clicked but did not turn all the way. Whoever it was stopped and waited. Then the footsteps moved away. I exhaled so hard it made me dizzy. I wanted to sit down, to cry, to scream, but I didn't. I stayed standing. Minutes passed. Then more footsteps. Heavier this time. 2 sets. They stopped right outside 307. I heard a voice say, "This one." Another voice replied, "You sure?" The first voice said my name, but wrong. Close, but not mine. That detail hit me harder than anything else. Yara had been right. I was a mistake. My phone buzzed with another call from Matteo. I answered without lowering the camera. He said, "They're on their way." I asked who. He said, "Help." That word gave me just enough strength to stay where I was. The handle turned slowly, deliberate. The door opened a few inches. I raised the phone higher and said, "You're being recorded." My voice shook, but the words came out clear. The door stopped moving. One of the men cursed under his breath. I stepped back, keeping them in frame. "You have the wrong person," I said. "You need to leave." For a second, no one spoke. Then one of them said, "This isn't your business." I said, "It is now." My hands were sweating so bad I almost dropped the phone. I backed toward the window, making sure they could see everything. Sirens cut through the night, loud and sudden. The men froze. One slammed the door shut as footsteps ran down the hall. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, shaking so hard my teeth hurt. My phone was still recording. A knock came again, this time sharp and official. A voice said, "Police." I opened the door and nearly collapsed into the hallway. Officers filled the space, radios crackling, lights flashing red and blue against the walls. As they took my statement, I asked about Yara. An officer nodded and said, "We found her. She's safe." I closed my eyes and cried, not from fear this time, but from relief. I had stayed. I had listened. And because of that, everything was about to change. The hallway filled with noise fast, boots on carpet, radios talking over each other. An officer guided me away from the door and into the stairwell, while others moved down the hall with purpose. My legs felt numb, like they belonged to someone else. I sat on the steps with my back against the wall, still holding my phone like it was the only solid thing left. Mateo showed up 10 minutes later. I recognized his walk before I saw his face. Calm, direct. He crouched in front of me and said my name once, slow and steady. "You did good," he said. I tried to answer, but my throat locked. He put a hand on my shoulder and waited until I could breathe again. An officer came over and asked me to go over everything one more time. I told him about the note, the knock, the wrong name, the men at the door. When I mentioned Yara, his expression changed. He asked, "The maid?" I nodded. He said, "She's a key witness." They took me back to the room after securing the floor. Room 307 didn't look the same anymore. The bed was messy. The chair was crooked. The air felt wrong, like it remembered what almost happened. One officer pointed at a small black dot near the smoke detector. "Camera," he said. Another one near the vent. Another hidden in the hallway outside. My stomach turned. I had been watched since the moment I checked in. They brought Yara in through the side stairwell. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen, her hair pulled back tight like she hadn't touched it in hours. When she saw me, she stopped walking. "You stayed," she said quietly. I nodded. She covered her mouth and started crying again, but this time it sounded different, like something heavy was finally being set down. Mateo spoke to her gently. He told her she was safe now. She shook her head and said, "What about my brother?" An officer answered her. "We found him." She dropped to her knees right there in the hallway. 2 officers helped her up as she sobbed into her hands. That's when I learned the truth. The hotel was part of a pipeline. They used quiet floors and fake maintenance work to move young women between cities. Room 307 was tagged in their system for someone else, a woman they were supposed to collect that night. When I checked in early and extended my stay, I stepped into her place without knowing it. One of the men they arrested was the one who had said my name wrong. He wouldn't look at me as they walked him past. I realized then how close I had come to disappearing into a mistake that would never have been fixed. They took the men away in handcuffs just as dawn started to push light through the windows. The hotel parking lot filled with police cars. Guests stood outside in blankets, whispering to each other, trying to understand what kind of place they had slept in. Before they let me leave, an officer handed me my phone. "Your recording helped," he said. "A lot." I nodded, still shaking. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like someone who got lucky because another person chose courage first. Yara came up to me before she left with victim services. She said, "I thought no one would listen." I told her, "You saved me." She shook her head. We saved each other. She hugged me tight, like she was afraid the moment would disappear if she let go. When I finally stepped outside, the sun was fully up. Morning traffic moved like nothing had happened. People drank coffee. Engines started. Life went on. I stood there longer than I needed to, breathing in the cool air, knowing that if I had ignored a piece of paper and a trembling voice, I would not be standing there at all. Room 307 was just a number, but that night, it became the line between being seen and being lost forever. I checked out of the hotel just after sunrise. I didn't go back to room 307. I didn't need to. Everything I owned fit back into my bag, but I felt heavier walking out than I had walking in days before. An officer escorted me to the front desk while they finished clearing the building. Marco was gone. No one told me where he went, and I didn't ask. Some answers didn't matter anymore. Mateo walked me to my car. He told me the case would take time. Statements, court dates, paperwork that would stretch on longer than anyone wanted. "But it's solid," he said. They won't walk away from this. I believed him. He hugged me once, quick and firm, then stepped back like he always did. Go home, he said. Rest. I drove straight back without stopping. The road felt unreal, like I was watching it instead of driving on it. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I just sat there with the engine off, listening to the quiet. My phone buzzed. A missed call from my mother. I called her back right away. Are you okay? She asked before I could say hello. I told her yes, but my voice gave me away. I went inside, sat at my kitchen table, and told her everything. I didn't spare details, but I didn't exaggerate either. When I finished, there was a long pause. Then she said, I'm glad you listened. That was all. It was enough. Later that day, Lena came over. She didn't joke like usual. She hugged me hard and said, Next time you travel, I'm tracking your phone. I smiled and told her that was fair. In the weeks that followed, I gave more statements. I handed over my phone and the video. I answered the same questions again and again. Each time, the story felt less sharp, less like it might cut me open if I touched it. The fear faded first. The memory stayed. I heard about Yara through victim services. Her brother was safe. He had been scared, but unharmed. She moved in with family in another state and enrolled in a program to help her start over. One afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. It was her. She wrote, I start a new job Monday. Thank you for staying. I stared at that message for a long time before replying, You're the reason I'm here. The hotel shut down for renovations that never reopened. The investigation spread wider than that building. Other arrests followed. Other victims came forward. Knowing that didn't make the nights easier at first, but it gave meaning to what happened. It wasn't just survival. It was interruption. A break in a chain that had hurt people for a long time. I went back to work eventually. Same kind of jobs, different places. But I don't move through the world the same way now. I notice exits. I notice people who won't make eye contact. I notice silence when it feels wrong. I don't brush off warnings anymore, even small ones. Especially not small ones. Sometimes I think about how close I came to leaving that night, how easy it would have been to ignore a folded note and a scared voice. I don't blame myself for almost doing it. Fear wants simple choices. But I'm proud I stayed, not because it was brave, but because it was human. Room 307 doesn't haunt me. What stays with me is Yara's face when she realized someone believed her. That moment mattered more than the danger. It reminded me that listening can be an action, sometimes the most important one. Life feels quieter now, not empty, clearer. I still call my mother every night. I still get jokes from my sister. Ordinary things returned, but they mean more. I don't rush through them anymore. Some warnings don't come with proof. They come with trust. That night taught me that trust can save lives, including your own. If you want more stories, subscribe and tell me where you're watching from.